Today we'll be discussing the new Netflix series Three Body Problem, and we'll be discussing fatty liver disease. This is Doctor versus Comedian. I'm Dr. Asif Doja, and this is the Doctor of Laughs.
Not a real doctor.
Ali Hassan. Every episode I pick a topic for Ali from comedy and entertainment, and I question him about it. Then Ali picks a topic from medicine and health and grills me on that topic. Today we'll be discussing the new Netflix series Three Body Problem. And we'll be discussing fatty liver disease. What do these things have in common? I don't know. Do they have anything in common?
They do. As we talk about fatty liver disease, I'll tell you what they have in common. You know what? I'll just spoil it right now. Possibly 30% of the cast and crew on Three Body Problem has fatty liver disease and doesn't know it.
That's a good point. We'll talk about how frequent this is, this disorder. It's quite frequent, but okay, let's start off first with Three Body Problem. So, Ali, I want to ask you your thoughts on this new series on Netflix. Currently, it's the number one series on Netflix. It's pretty exciting for me that this series came about because I'd read the first book in the series. It's based on a trilogy of novels by a Chinese author. I'm going to pronounce his name properly.
We just want to do right by a guy who's sort of pioneering author in a way. This is a person who has brought science fiction to the Chinese masses in a way that it wasn't, received or accessed this way before. This is incredible work, right? So, I agree.
Yeah, and to be fair, this is hard science fiction. Like, when you read the book, some people say it comes across as a bit boring because it's not very character-based. The characters are, other than Dashi, who is played by Benedict Wong in the series, who's a very interesting character. The other ones are kind of a bit, they're just there to propel the plot and talk about these astrophysics concepts. And so, it turned a lot of people onto hard science fiction in China. And so, I'm going to try and pronounce his name. Hold on.
Cixin. Liu Cixin. Liu Cixin.
That was from the internet. So I'm going to say Cixin Liu. Cixin Liu.
Well,
how's that,
it's
Ali?
Liu. I think they said Liu Cixin.
No, but I think if you're saying it and you're from China, you'd say Lu as opposed to saying Liu.
Oh, is that right? You think the internet guy is
know.
wrong? Okay.
Well, I don't know. I'll just say Cixin Liu. Boy, this is.
Why are you saying it backwards? Why are you saying it like it's a government form that he's filling out? His first name is Liu, last name is Cixin.
No, but when they list him as an author, they say Cixin Liu.
I know, but you're not a book repository. Why are you listing him as an author? You're talking about him as a dude.
No, but
as a human
on the cover of the novel. Like, why would you? Your novel is not called Hassan Ali.
That's what I'm saying. I thought his actual name, his Ali Hassan, is Liu Cixin. No?
I don't think so.
Boy.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Okay. Oh my God.
When you look him up, it's Liu Cixin.
No, but okay. Well, I don't know. Listen, this is gold audio right here.
Gold audio. Liu Cixin, by the way, a computer engineer in China and science fiction writer. 9-time winner of China's Galaxy Award and has also received the 2015 Hugo Award for his novel, The Three Body Problem.
Okay. And by the way, you're mentioning one thing that is very interesting, which is that the series is called Three Body Problem, and his novel is called The Three Body Problem. Obviously, his novels were translated into English and became huge hits, so big that many people, including Barack Obama, loved these novels when they came out several years ago. And they were thought to be unadaptable. And so this brings us to the creators of this show, which are the same guys who created Game of Thrones.
Yes, really? And when I found that out, what did I ask you about Three Body Problem? What was my first concern?
Is it boring?
No. Are there dragons in Three Body Problem? Because if there are, I don't want nothing to do with it. I don't know why. And maybe it stems from my inability to understand the game Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid. And now I just have a thing
that makes you
dragons.
the nerd.
What? No, they were the nerds. I was the loser, but still cool in my books. Self-assessed cool.
Well, I think similarly to how Game of Thrones is about the political intrigue, and there are dragons and White Walker zombies and all these things going on, but it's really about the political intrigue going on in Westeros. Similarly to that, this is a science fiction story, but with other planets and things like that. But really, it's about physics and problem solving and how humanity would have to try and address these challenges, which may be coming from outside of our planet. And so it's David Benioff and Dan Weiss who have created Game of Thrones and who did this. And their story about how they created this is kind of interesting. People remember Game of Thrones, critically acclaimed for many years, and then towards the end of the series, kind of fell off a cliff, and psychologists call this the peak end rule. How people feel about the end of something tends to color how they feel about all of it.
Which is why, right? As a stand-up comedian, your closer should be fantastic. And
there we go.
He was amazing, but he wasn't.
That's true. And the last scene of a movie often, colors how you may have interpreted the rest of the movie. So that's how people felt about Game of Thrones. These guys say they stayed off social media completely, which is probably for the best because they would have probably thought about self-harm because of how people were so down towards the end of Game of Thrones. I've said this before on the podcast, and this is a quote from an article. I wish I could find the article, but someone said it felt like the creators of Game of Thrones were like the waiters at a restaurant when they're trying to get you to leave at the end of the night, like putting up the chairs on the tables and sweeping around you, just like they were trying to rush things out. And there's a lot of feeling that maybe they were burnt out towards the end of it and just needed it to be over. Who knows? But that's the first issue, is that they needed to look for something as a follow-up to it. And these guys made a huge deal, like a business deal with Netflix, to come up with a new series. So one of the things they were supposed to be doing, which I think we've talked about before, Ali, is this show Confederate. And they did bring on black writers, and you see why I'm pointing that out in a second, because the idea of this was an alternative timeline drama in which the South did secede from the Union, and slavery is still legal. And then there's going to be a new civil war coming up. I think this is supposed to take place in modern times. So imagine living in America now where slavery still exists. Like, I don't know. I mean, basically everybody said this was probably the worst idea in television. And they thought it was worth doing to look at the concepts of race, currently by looking at this fictional premise. But nobody liked it.
Yeah.
So it was scrapped.
Yeah, with good reason. What I like is, if you're a keen listener of this podcast, you will remember that Asif said, Ali, I want to get your opinion on this show. And then that was about 25 minutes ago. And he's just been sort of talking since. Hold on. I'm joking. Yes, set up the scene. And we should mention extra mild spoilers exist. Extra mild. But if you really want no knowledge of what this show's about, you should probably skip ahead to fatty liver. But I mean, look, the three-body problem in itself suggests what's happening here if you don't want us to mention aliens.
But speaking of aliens, I got to mention this. Benioff and Weiss, before they decided to do three-body problem, they were supposed to make a new Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of Star Wars movies that were pitched by big creators. A lot of them were jettisoned by Lucasfilm. These guys want to do the first Jedi, like how the Jedi Order came to be, the first lightsaber, how it was created. And Disney and Lucasfilm said, yeah, we'll pass on that too. So then they were basically like, okay, what are we supposed to do? And there were some high up executives in Netflix who said, you should adapt this three-body problem. And they hadn't read it at that point. They read it, and they both said, this is a challenge, because most people, like I said, have said these books are unadaptable for the screen. There is a bit of complications around adapting it because these guys got the rights, and Netflix got the rights to the English translation of it. A separate group has the Chinese rights, and they've already made like a mini series in China about a three-body problem. So that's kind of where we're at when this show was created. So as you said, Ali, like this whole idea of a three-body problem is a physics problem. Like, two bodies orbiting each other with a gravitational pull is like us and the sun, us and the moon. Those are pretty easy to predict. But a three-body problem is when you have three objects perhaps three sons. I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with this TV show and book, and how you can't predict their orbits, and it's basically chaotic. So again, as Ali said, that's kind of a mild spoiler, I guess, if you didn't know what a three-body problem was. The other thing that is interesting about this show is that it's, as you said, it's a Chinese author, and it's very, very based in China, especially the first couple scenes in it. So I'm curious what you thought about that, Ali. Just so you guys know, I've seen the whole series, and Ali's watched the first two episodes. And I do recommend people, if you want to give it a try, watch the first two episodes, because they're it just kind of gets you more hooked into it, if you would agree, Ali.
I understand what you were saying, because you were like, I was going to watch one, which I thought would give me a leg up compared to zero. That's not how Asif works. Asif is like, keep going. Your thoughts were the second episode is much better. The first episode is okay. I didn't feel that. I thought the first episode hooked me in immediately. I thought it was great. But I think you have that perspective because you read the book. Or was it books?
Yeah.
Did you read? And you know what's coming later.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, number one doesn't hint at it.
Wait till you see what happens. Exactly.
But I thought it was still great television.
The very last scene of the second episode is like, that's it. That's the hook that I'm like, I love that. What happens, because it was so unexpected what happens in the book. And then so I think that kind of goes forward. But Ali, it's because the opening scene takes place during the Cultural Revolution in China in the late 60s. This was a period where basically the Chinese Communist Party has been trying to, really get rid of things like the arts, like physics, like science. And there's a scene in it which is like, it's the first scene in the book, it's the first scene in the movie, and it's quite horrific. It's basically a physicist being pulled on a stage in front of people while, his daughter watches, to be questioned and beaten.
Yeah, his daughter and hundreds and hundreds of other people as well. Yeah, it's a public humiliation, which I didn't, to be honest, I didn't know. Like, with the advances in science in China, I had no idea there would have been a period like this where science was suppressed. I was actually confused by that moment when I was watching it, that this physicist would be like public enemy number one. And he was just like, well, these are the fundamental laws of science. And one of the people abusing him on stage is a former student of his. These young revolutionaries have been brainwashed so bad. Yeah, it's very, very powerful. The other thing that comes to mind right now, man, I recently watched The Queen of My Dreams, which I recommend highly to anybody who loves great film. It's out across Canada right now. In late March, it was out. It came out, and it'll hopefully stay in theaters as long as you go and watch it. I watched something called Crashing Eid with a friend of mine, Hamza Haq, who's in transplant. So Crashing Eid is set in Saudi Arabia, and you have these Saudi actors who really steal the show. We would not know about any. I looked some of them up. They have quite a deep body of work, but it's all in Arabic in Saudi Arabia, or in the Middle East, I should say. Then Queen of My Dreams, there's these just tangential characters who come in, a drug dealer, a carpet seller, a fabric seller, just flawless guest star performances. And again, this show, particularly this actress in this series, this young actor, and I say young, she's like literally out of, I think, Taiwanese acting school and into this show. Her name is Xin Tseng. And Xin Tseng, who plays the younger version of this, Yi Wenji is the character's name. Yi Wenji, I mean, what a phenomenal performance. She's just, the screen loves her. It was so understated and so perfect. I don't know how she has this sort of sense at whatever she would be in her young 20s, but really, really something. Just everything I seem to watch lately is a reminder of how much incredible talent there is around the world that we're not regularly exposed to, So I really thought the acting, particularly from the Chinese performers, is so good, so strong.
Totally. And there are people that you recognize in it. There's quite a few people from Game of Thrones. There's about 3 actors from Game of
I
Thrones
recognize
who you
none
will
because I never
recognize. You
watched
didn't
it.
watch
Yeah.
it. And then there's Benedict Wong, who you probably know from the Marvel movies. He's the current Sorcerer Supreme in the Marvel universe. And he plays this character, Daishi, who I believe is called Clarence, like as his English name in it. And he was happy to be in it because he actually gets to play someone with a North England accent, which is his actual
Yeah.
accent, which I never knew
Yeah,
watching him
yeah.
in
No,
movies.
no, who would have known that, right? Unless you're watching interviews with Benedict Wong. He said this was the closest thing to himself when he saw the description of the character. He was like, did these guys look up my Wikipedia or something? How do they know so much about me? Which is, I think, when you've done so much character stuff and nobody knows the real you, and you probably forget who am I really anyway. I'm sure that's like really exciting to just sort of be yourself. A lot of smoking, a lot of cigarette smoke. If I was a smoker, I probably would have taken 15 breaks in the first 2 episodes just to go have a puff of my own
There
cigarettes.
is no vaping, just smoking. The other thing that the show does is they take, like I said, there are a few main characters in the book, and they kind of take one of the protagonists, who was a bit boring in the book, and they divide them up into 4 or 5 different characters who are all friends who studied physics at Oxford and who've kind of gone off in the world and are brought back together for various circumstances. And that's probably good because, again, if you're just talking about, physics and the theory behind everything, that could be a pretty boring show. And so what they do is they kind of try and develop those characters. And I think overall it's successful. There are a few characters where I'm like, what are they doing? They just seem to be hanging around, but you have to watch the series to the end to see how they kind of fulfill what's going on. Just one thing to get back to the portrayal of the Cultural Revolution. 2 things. The very first scene we talked about with this guy being brought on a huge stage in front of hundreds of people and his daughter watching. It's very reminiscent of a scene from Game of Thrones from the episode Baylor, where a similar thing happens to Sean Bean's character. And of course, those of you who've seen Game of Thrones know what I'm talking about. So that's very interesting because it's staged similarly with his daughter in the audience watching, which is also what happens in Baylor. So that was interesting. The other thing is, I guess there has been some, negative criticism from the Chinese governments about this portrayal because the current Communist Party they're trying to erase this period of history, and not have it portrayed. In the Chinese series, they have very few references to the Red Guard, to this Cultural Revolution, but it's portrayed quite brutally, literally in this one. So it's interesting. And if you look, they tried to get Alexander Wu, who's one of the writers on this. He used to write on True Blood. And so he's one of the main writers and showrunners on this because they wanted someone who obviously feels a connection to China. There's also Derek Sang, who directs, I think, the first 2 episodes. And they're like, this happened to our family and our friends, during the Cultural Revolution. A lot of the reason why people left China during this time. And so they have to show something that really happened and they feel a duty to that. So even though a lot of the show takes place in China, not all of it does. And so that some people also criticized it for whitewashing, but I think it's just more a different portrayal of what's going on. Plus, as you remember, they had the rights to the English language version. And then if they made an English language version in China, but everybody spoke English, what kind of version is that? It doesn't make any sense, right? So I think adapting it and making it a bit more international is reasonable in terms of what's going on for this. Ali, what did you think so far? You've watched 2 episodes, like I said.
I'm actually a little bit irritated because I have to get my taxes done, and this is going to get in the way. I cannot wait. The plan is to wrap up our recording and head straight to my basement and watch another episode or 2. I'm very much hooked. This is sort of reminiscent of the way I felt with The Last of Us. Just like, can't get enough. And you know what, to be honest, I probably would have felt the same thing about Game of Thrones. I have some initial reluctance to get into it, but some time has passed. I think I will move forward and not go backwards, but I really like the show. I will also say that I don't have a scientific mind. I was a little bit like, I'm not sure I fully understand, fully. I'm not sure I at all understand the science that they're talking about. And the nice sort of refreshing thing is Dashi, Benedict Wong's partner, says, I don't really understand this science, sir. And he's like, yeah, nobody does. He's like, they're making it so that even like the least science knowledgeable people, myself definitely included, are comfortable watching this, and it doesn't really matter. And I also, because I didn't get the science so much, I was really dialed into the performances, especially in that first episode. And with the exception of one, and I won't mention who, but, there's one character when they first come on, I'm very aware of some overacting, and then that gets resolved very quickly.
What? No, I want you to tell me. Who do you think it is? Well, I don't know. It's not you think it is. Who is it? Come on, you can tell me.
I will tell you.
Just between you and me, Ali. The audience doesn't have to hear this.
That's
they
fine.
will, of course, because we're going to keep recording.
So I felt like Jovan Adepo, and Jovan Adepo is a phenomenal actor. I know him from Fences with Denzel Washington. He's very, very good. He's in, To Catch a
He was
Kill.
in Fences? I love Fences.
Yeah, Fences.
Yeah.
He's in The Watchmen. He's Will Reeves in The Watchmen. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah, of course.
He's good. There's just his first scene I found to be just a little overacted. I don't know. Again, I'm dialed into it because I'm not fully understanding what the issues are around the science. And so I was watching it very keenly. And then it was never overacting again. Just his first scene. And I was like, it's taking me out of it, And then after that, all rectified and fantastic.
Yeah, he's one of those characters I was alluding to where I'm like, what is the point of this character? He doesn't really do anything, whereas the other ones have a lot of stuff to do, but you just got to wait till the end of the series and we'll see. So in terms of what I thought, I overall liked it. I think the best things about it is that it's actually pretty fast moving. Like they get to, like I said, a climax and a scene at the end of the second episode where I'm like, wow, that took a long time to get to that in the book. And the book was sometimes hard for me to get through, but this moves at a very quick pace. Without giving any spoilers, episode 5 contains probably the most exciting scene in the novel, and that episode is the peak. As soon as I watched the episode, I'm like, they did it. It's absolutely amazing. So definitely watch the first 2 episodes, but if you can just watch till episode 5, I think you guys will be hooked on it. It's such a great scene.
We should mention, this is from the Hollywood Reporter article that I'm sure we'll have a link to, Asif, but the hope is that this team wants to do 4 seasons. They're looking at it sort of from a longer range perspective, like they were with Game of Thrones. They had immediately a larger world that they were thinking about. Nothing is promised to anybody, obviously, but that's what they're hoping for.
Yeah, and they fast forwarded a few things from the latter 2 novels into this, which seems to make sense. Again, you'll see what happens in this and the reasons why they did that. And like I said, it's really about like how the world will deal with this existential threat that's coming in. So I think it's good. I think the acting is good. And I think we also have to, as we're comparing it to Game of Thrones, my own personal opinion with Game of Thrones, I liked Game of Thrones and I watched it and I'm like, that's a pretty good show. And then that episode Baylor, which I referenced before, which has Sean Bean's character brought up onto the stage to kind of be, abused. That turned me around and I watched that scene. I'm like, this is the best show on television right now. And I think this is a bit of a slow build as well, right? I wouldn't say by the end of this is the best show on television. Like I think, so for example, The Last of Us is a better show. I think The Bear is a better show, but you can see the potential where this could get to Game of Thrones levels because of what they accomplished in this. So I really encourage people, if you think you'd like it, check it out. Like again, if you hate everything related to science fiction, then forget it. But like I said, compared to Game of Thrones was about political intrigue, but set with dragons, etc. This is about how you deal with an existential threat, how the world deals with that, and how you realistically would try and address that. My only criticisms would be, I think the special effects are, episode 5, which has this pivotal scene and sequence, needs very good special effects, and you can see they spent all their money on that episode. Some of the other special effects I thought were slightly weak, which is weird because they spent $20 million an episode on this, and there's 8 episodes. But again, I think people should check it out. Very curious to see what our listeners think about this. And I'll just tell you, the creators did ask Barack Obama to be in the series and asked him if he'd be willing to, and he said no thanks, but if there was ever a real alien invasion, I actually may need to help out with that, so I'll save myself for that.
Right. Well, he could play one of the aliens himself.
That's mean.
Okay, next subject, one that is near and dear to our hearts. Not our hearts, but one of our other organs. Unfortunately, you and I will be talking about this from a place of knowledge, experience, and concern, personal concern. Fatty liver disease is something that I don't want to show off here, but I've had for quite some time. It's gone away. It's come back. It's gone away. Listen, I've been 30 pounds overweight for many years. There's no mystery as to why I've been overweight. I have done that to myself intentionally. I've had many late night wings and pizza and lots of alcohol through the years. I was that guy. I was, Thursday, Friday, Saturday were made for drinking. And in order to get myself to have a good sleep, you stuff yourself with pizza at the end of the night. It was just what do you call that?
Bad habit?
No, well, yes, bad habit, but a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage. You got to go through
ritual.
all this ritual, if you will. I think ritual is the way to say it, which then became a bad habit to the point where it's been a struggle to not snack on something at night. So then you come to a point where you're like, hey, I'm snacky. You know what? Gonna have some apple slices. Gonna have some carrots and hummus, and it's immediately unsatisfying. And then over time, it's like, no, this is fine. And you know what? I could even just have 2 glasses of water and not have any snacking. So it's been a massive work in progress. But I found out many years ago, I probably would have been in my 30s, early 30s, late 20s, where I was told that I have a fatty liver. And a fatty liver was determined by a blood test. You don't have to get the liver ultrasound and the rest of it, although I've also had the liver ultrasound done.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that. Yeah. I didn't know that. Okay.
And it was a concern, and I was scared for myself when I first heard it. And then I just let it go for a long time. I got some problems here. But I am at an age and a stage of my life where I am trying to take this seriously. For me, I can talk about what I'm trying to do and what has worked. When I know that I went for a blood test and the fatty liver was gone, I can tell people what I did. It did not involve cutting alcohol out of my diet, which was very interesting to me. Now, everybody might have different reactions, but I'll talk about that. But why don't we back up things right now and talk about what a fatty liver is, Asif?
Right. So it basically is the accumulation of fat, so triglycerides and other fats in the liver. And these accumulate in the liver cells themselves. Okay?
And the liver is, you correct me if I'm wrong here, layman's terms, layperson's terms, the body's filter.
That's right. So you can think of our body has 2 filters, right? The kidneys, which you have 2 of, and then the liver. But the liver, yeah, it has a bunch of functions, but that's one of the main functions is to filter out toxins.
So if you have a fatty liver, you are overloading your liver with fat to a point that the liver can't work efficiently enough to dispose of this fat? Is that what
It may cause problems like that, yeah. And there's 2 kinds. There's alcoholic-related fatty liver and non-alcoholic. So we're going to talk mainly today about the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but we should probably just address the alcoholic one. That's much less common, and this occurs in people who abuse alcohol. That's about 5% of people, say, living in the U.S. will have this. And because it's directly related to alcohol, you stop drinking alcohol, it usually gets better. Not always. If you've abused your liver to the point of liver failure, then, And so what happens at the beginning is you'd have maybe an enlarged liver, which might cause some discomfort. The liver is on the upper right side of your abdomen. So if there's pain there, it might be enlarged liver, but that could also be your gallbladder, which is in the same area. Then you can get an alcoholic hepatitis. So that's inflammation of the liver because of this fat accumulation. And then the last stage, again, for this alcoholic fatty liver disease is alcoholic cirrhosis. You've probably heard about cirrhosis of the liver. That's scar tissue in your liver, and that can lead to a bunch of problems, eventually liver failure, which could be fatal. And some of those patients need a liver transplant or they die. And
the cirrhosis, there's no coming back from that. Is that correct?
Yeah, once you've had that scarring, it's the earlier stages where if you stop drinking, you can kind of reverse it. It's very tough because with the cirrhosis, you'll get fluid buildup in your belly, increased blood pressure in the liver itself, sometimes bleeding changes, sometimes a large spleen. It can be very serious. So it's better to intervene at the earlier stages.
So it's not a great commercial for alcohol, right?
Well, exactly. But then there's the non-alcoholic type. That is what you were getting at, Ali, in our intro. It affects 1 in 3 adults in the United States. So that's what you're saying.
And maybe some aliens, huh? We don't know. We don't know what the diet is up there.
We don't know what they're eating. So, yeah, it is extremely common. Okay. And so that's a lot of people. And that's what you're saying. Even the cast, we don't know anything about their dietary habits, but 1 in 3 of that cast probably does, right? So there's different types, right? You can just get a simple fatty liver, which maybe there's no inflammation, maybe there's no damage. And that's most people. But sometimes you can get what's called a non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So steato means fat, and hepatitis is inflammation of the liver. So there's fatty inflammation of the liver. So then if you're developing that can cause the fibrosis and eventually cirrhosis in some patients. So that would be concerning. And it's also puts you at a risk of liver cancer.
So I had no idea about this. I thought cirrhosis was directly related to alcohol, but you can get cirrhosis of the liver without alcohol.
It's due to the inflammation. So we're just talking about 2 different pathways for inflammation. So 20% of people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease have this steatohepatitis. So 20% of people, 20% of that third of all people will have this inflammation of their liver due to the fat. So that's a bit concerning because that's a huge amount of people, right?
Sure is.
And I'll tell you something else that's more scary, Ali, about numbers here. 10% of children, again, we're talking about US numbers, have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Crazy stuff.
And the numbers are growing. And if in obese children, 38% of them have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
And we'll talk about a cause in a moment, especially if you don't mention what I'm desperate for you to mention. But anyway, what do you link this to?
Right. So, as usual, people don't know the exact cause, but I think the way you phrased it is really good.
I'm growing up. You know, I'm changing. I'm a different person because of this.
Linked to? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's linked to a lot of things, mainly weight gain, being overweight, having diabetes, having high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart disease.
Very unsatisfactory answer, but all right, keep it going.
Your doctor would screen you, and basically, if you have one of either type 2 diabetes or obesity being defined as a body mass index over 30, right? Or you have 2 of high cholesterol, being overweight, so BMI over 25, visceral adiposity, so accumulation of fat around your internal organs, which can sometimes be hard to measure externally, but you can measure that within a large waist circumference, okay? Well, your doctor takes a tape measure around your waist, or having high blood pressure. So if you have one of type 2 diabetes or obesity or 2 of those other things, then your doctor would be suspicious that you might have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Okay, so in the show, the original goal of the show was Ali grills me on a medical topic. So prepare for a light grilling here, a toasting, if you will. You are linking it to diabetes, you're linking it to these various other conditions, but like most doctors, you're not linking it to the original thing. The original, what is, and this is what I was hoping you would talk about, but in October of last year, I'm not sure if you put any money into the Journal of Clinical Nutrition, but there was a study. I'm very obsessed with this in particular, ultra processed foods, right? Which have just come out and they're in their own category. UPF is a whole different thing at this point. But there has been a link. Increased UPF consumption was linked to elevated risks of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and then eventually cirrhosis and hepatic illness and this kind of thing. So I really this is what I attribute to. I know when I was eating wings and pizza at night, that's going into, but now with so many people being shocked that they have fatty liver disease, their weight, they don't have these other bad markers. I think that's something to really ingredients are in bad news. Those are my thoughts.
We'll talk about it when it comes to what we should do about it. But in the end, eating a lot of these foods will contribute to obesity. And as you said, high cholesterol. So
yes.
But so we're drinking alcohol. So, I mean, maybe people should stop doing that too.
Okay, so we obviously would need to talk about lifestyle modifications. But first of all, how's this diagnosed? I know, but tell people how fatty liver is diagnosed. It's blood work, but what is seen in the blood work that indicates fatty liver?
Yeah, lots of people have no symptoms. And so maybe your doctor would do blood tests. So if you have some of those risk factors, then they might do some blood tests. But over 80% of people who have this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease will have normal blood tests. So it's not 100%. So basically, you could be suggested to have this if you have those risk factors we talked about, if you have an ultrasound, which shows a fatty liver, as you said, or the blood tests are abnormal. So these are liver function tests that may be outside the normal reference range. And there's no obvious reason for that. Or you can have what's called a high ferritin. So a ferritin is a blood test that you can do that usually we use to measure iron stores. So if it's low, you might have an iron deficiency anemia because you're not taking enough iron in your diet. Women who lose a lot of blood with their periods, maybe they'll have some low iron. But the ferritin is actually high in patients who have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And that's probably because of some inflammation going on in the liver, though there's not an exact correlation, but that's the suggestion. So why am I bringing this up? Because my doctor the other day, one of the reasons we're doing this, my doctor the other day is like, yeah, I want to send you for some more blood work, because of the fatty liver. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You never said anything like that to me. So I went back and looked at the blood work that he's done over the past couple of years, and he's done this ferritin level in me, I'd say since 2021. And guess what? It's been high every single time.
I know he only mentioned it
like,
this time. I guess he assumed as a doctor you would...
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
That I knew why he was doing it. But I don't know anything about this.
He assumed that you cared is what his problem is. Huh? That's his mistake.
And the other risk factor, by the way, is being over 40 years of age, Ali. So basically, here's what they suggest doctors do. First of all, you screen for alcoholism because that's a reversible cause, right? As long as you're not at the end stage. So very important to do that, decrease your alcohol consumption. Then, your doctor can do the screening blood test. If they're suspicious, they can do a liver ultrasound. And they can also calculate what's called an FIB4. That estimates your risk of fibrosis. And basically, it's like a calculation they do. They take a liver test called AST, and they take another liver test called an ALT, and they take your platelet count. So platelets are a blood cell we have that does blood clotting. And they do a little calculation with those, and based on that calculation, they can look at your risk of fibrosis. And if it's high, they can do other tests. There's one called an ELF test, which is another blood test, or they can do a FibroScan, which looks at how fibrotic your liver is, and that can indicate some end-stage damage.
These are all follow-up tests once you have a sort of a flag on your basic blood work, right?
Yeah, that's right. And if you are deemed to be at low risk after doing those tests, then they might just recommend lifestyle modifications. But if you're seen at high risk and you might have fibrosis in your liver, which could indicate you're going to develop some of these other problems, then you might be sent to what's called a hepatologist, which is an expert in liver disease, to look into this a bit more. So it really is, I think, you have to be aware that a lot of people are at risk for this. And then your family doctor or nurse practitioner, or whoever you're seeing, can kind of look at doing some of these tests and seeing what your risk is. And if you're at a very high risk or your ultrasound is very suggestive, then you might need to see a liver specialist about this.
I'm going to go beyond what Asif said. You don't have to wait for diabetes and other high cholesterol. If you even young people who are not active and who consume some of these foods, I don't know. I would say get ahead of it. I was told about it early and did nothing about it. Don't do what I did.
Okay, but I do want to get into this because we're just talking about what you can do. And again, it's often the screening from your doctor, and then if they see something, then lifestyle modification. So we talked about alcohol, but what did you do? I'm curious what you did, and we'll see if it goes in line with what other people say.
Yeah. So, what I did, it was the pandemic, and, having... Some people are going to hear this and just hear the words coping mechanism, and that's fine. I don't deny that. But during the pandemic, my work is a lot of live work. I was still able to do the broadcasting at CBC here in Canada, but that's like 20-30% of my work. There was no acting. There was no performing on stage. There was no writing and this kind of stuff. And what brought me joy was sitting on my front porch like an old immigrant couple with my wife and making fun of people in the neighborhood while drinking some wine or tequila. That's what we had, for the first few months while the earth was healing. We were doing this to ourselves. However, while I was drinking basically nightly, or at least 5 out of 7, I would say, and never to excess, rarely to like drunkenness, I was also, what the main change was we went as a family to plant-based food 6 days a week. And on the 7th day, we didn't care. We started the day with eggs, pizza for lunch, meatloaf for supper, whatever. Day 7 was it was party time, so to speak. But 6 days a week, it was plant-based. But I think this is very important. I think it's very important for people to be ingredients focused. And our plant-based was what I would say is whole food plant-based. So I didn't have any kind of mock chicken and mock shrimp and like those things with like 35, 40 ingredients. We weren't having that. You make like a black bean burger yourself with quinoa and black bean and mushroom. We'd make it ourselves and fry that. We still had, chips. We still had bread. It wasn't very incredibly health focused, but we had no sort of mocked meat, no processed, super processed food.
Yeah.
Still the processing of bread and chips. I'm not going to say that we were heroes, but I would, instead of making like, a fake chicken burger, I would make like a coconut curry with, sweet potatoes, eggplant, turnips, this kind of stuff. It was delicious, Thai style curry. That was our go-to instead of fake food. And all the stuff, I had high sugar, I had high cholesterol, I had fatty liver. Everything within 6 months of eating that way came down to perfectly
Did you
normal.
lose weight as well?
And I did lose weight. And I didn't stop drinking.
Right. Like, imagine what could have happened if you stopped drinking as well.
Yeah.
But so I'll tell you what the lifestyle modifications that are recommended, and then you can compare them, Ali, with what you did. So basically, any measure they suggest to achieve a sustained weight loss of 7 to 10% of initial body weight. Okay. So that's a lot. Like 10% of body weight is like 20 pounds for lots of people, right?
Yeah. If you knew my weight, you'd be scared for me. Yes.
So that's tough. And so that's, I think, the key. Any measure that you can do it. So that may be doing what you did, switching to plant-based. That's decreasing your calories and but they recommend a Mediterranean diet is most often recommended, which is very similar to what you were doing.
Sure.
Maybe
I think if we added fish and then occasional meat,
But that's fine. You're getting your protein through other sources. So I think that's kind of what's suggested. Regular exercise. So we're talking 150 minutes per week. Aerobic or anaerobic, maybe aerobic better because it can help some other metabolic parameters, but it depends. You can get a pretty good aerobic workout by doing weights and stuff like that. It just depends on how you do them. So more importantly that you're exercising, right? So that's 150 minutes a week, 30 minutes, 5 times a week. Like that's, it's, you got to schedule that in.
You do.
But
I had that to some degree as well. During the pandemic, I will say that, both my kids, their sports were sort of canceled. One guy was doing Zoom soccer training. I think many parents would have had this experience. You're not going for those sports anymore. Hockey's canceled, soccer's canceled. Those are my kids' sports, my boys. So I was like, okay, let's go to the park. So I was doing a lot of like tennis in the park, baseball in the park. So not that high level of exercise that's recommended, but I would have described myself as active during that time that we were also.
And I'll just tell people one of my pieces of advice, and this is what I try to do personally, and you have to always remember this. Sometimes, but I can't do 150 minutes a week. I can probably do like 3 30-minute workouts a week. You know what? That's better than nothing. So you just got to do what you can in these situations. Oh, yeah, I don't think I can lose 10% of my body weight. Maybe you can lose 5%. That's great. You know what I mean? If that's possible. The other recommendations they have is to avoid alcohol if you have this advanced fibrosis or cirrhosis. In other words, you should probably not do it, like 0 alcohol, and limit your alcohol for all other patients. So limiting that can definitely help as well. And they say avoid industrial fructose in sugar-sweetened beverages. So this is like, a Coke or things like that.
I recently heard somebody who's like a diabetes sort of specialist talk about if sugar is the first 5 ingredients in a product, or was it first 5? It might be first 3. If sugar is one of the first 3 ingredients, it's a dessert. It's not
Interesting.
your breakfast cereal. It's not your bread of choice in the family. It's not your what. That's, I think, something to whatever. I'm just sharing that. That came across my radar. I give it to you as a gift. Do with it what you will.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Slightly worry about my liver situation. I'm going for another blood test next week. Yeah, it's a bit, like I'm certainly much more concerned after researching for this episode than I was before. As you were implying, Ali, I was kind of like, okay, well, whatever he thinks, fatty liver, he's doing these blood tests, whatever. Now I'm like, I should probably make sure I get a handle on this. So again, looking at some of these lifestyle modifications and maybe getting more testing if it's necessary to see where I'm at on this inflammation pathway. So yeah, I'll keep everybody posted.
Keep people on our information pathway, if you will.
I will. That's our episode for today. Let us know what you guys thought about it. Let us know what you guys thought about Three Body Problem. Have you guys watched it? Do you agree with our takes? Did you not like it?
We got a one body problem here.
That's right, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Let us know what you guys thought about this. Any other similar topics you want us to cover? Do you want us to give you an update on how we're doing? Maybe that might be depressing, so maybe we won't do that.
No, inspirational. Come on.
Reach out to us, drvcomedian@gmail.com, drvcomedian on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We are everywhere. Before we go, I just want to remind you that although I'm a doctor, I'm not your doctor. Medical issues we talk about are for your interest and information only, and they're not medical advice. Please consult your medical professionals for actual medical advice. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.